Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Red Flag 2017 in Command. We are just about ready to start pushing some assets in here to do something about this big air threat we have developing and to start taking out some targets. Now, I have all the assets available to me, with some exceptions, getting airborne and getting on station right now. So what I can do in the meantime is go ahead and start to get my decoys pushing into the area, and you saw the plan in the first mission, or the first video of this series on that, pushing in the decoys first in just a big wave, as big as I can make it, or I don't know, I'll look at that and see just what a reasonable sized decoy salvo would look like. Then follow that up with my Generation 5 fighters, F-22s, to come in here and take care of all these guys, or as many as I can. Follow that up with some SEAD aircraft to come in here and take out some targets from long range, obviously. And then the part of it that I haven't really definitively figured out and planned just yet is what I'm going to do as a follow-up. I know that I have a preponderance of JASMs. I have a lot of long-range strike missiles, and all the time that I took just looking at all the individual loadouts is really what's dictating how I do this. This is really the first time that I've played through it in any detail. So the follow-up to the SEAD is going to be a big wave of JASMs on the two target sets, the north and south targets, taking out as many of those targets that were identified in the side briefing as I can, as I continue to have aircraft get airborne, and I'm going to continue to rename them as I get them up here and continue to try to keep this organized. But first, let me go ahead and get some stuff happening here. I've got a B-52 selected, and all this one really has loaded is a whole bunch of Maldives, so I'll go ahead and unload this guy first, and then think about what I want to do with my one of my two B-52s. So let's go ahead and set up. I'll go Control F1, and this is a bearing-only launch through Control F1, the keyboard combination. So essentially, the point at which I click on the map is where these Maldives decoys are going to fly to along that azimuth, and then if they happen to survive all the way in, this is the point at which they are going to hold. So let me go ahead and manually allocate. I'll put 4 of them up on this one. I'm sorry, that was 3. Let me go one more. So what'll look like a 4-ship of some kind of aircraft going in there. I'll do one more a little bit to the south of that, and I'll actually have this one come out here and overfly the target to try and draw as much fire off of that location as I can. The idea being that these distract the air defenses, and that these also cause these SAM sites to fire their missiles and hopefully run out, or at least hopefully be shooting at the wrong things. Okay, 4 more. I think that, how many did I have total? I had 16 total to begin with. I think I'll have 4 left over, so okay, that's it for that one. Now, thinking about where I want to put this guy, I've got the database entry up. Let me just kind of let things play out here for a few 30, 45 seconds, however long it takes for me to come to a decision here. I'll accelerate time a little bit for you, and I'll be right back. Okay, so on the B-52, I have a couple of different options for offensive ECM. I think I'm going to put this to use. I have the ANLQ-155 that you probably saw me looking at on the Northrop Grumman website, which didn't really get into any detail, and then the FAS.org, which you can't always trust anything these guys put up, but it's usually good background info in either case. But yeah, a good offensive ECM capability there. So what I'm going to do is assign the B-52 to the North ECM mission that I set up last video a little while ago, and just have it out there radiating as an ECM platform. Now, speaking of that, this would be a good time as well to get my Growlers, my EA-18s, onto their tracks for ECM coverage as well. Now, okay, this one, 2-ship, I'll put this one onto the South ECM track. I also had a 4-ship that also had harms. Did I not? Well, maybe. I'll put, in either case, these 4, right-click and assign them to ECM North to keep the B-52 company. And you can see as soon as I assign them to the mission, they automatically, just like I set the mission up, start to jam any transmissions. So even better to, make this look like a real strike package going in, and to further confuse the enemy. Speaking of that, I also have some F-16s with multi-Js, the jammer versions of the decoys. Let me go ahead and at least commit 4 of those. So Control F1, I'll have this one overfly the southern target area, and I'll just assign 2 to, well, I don't know, I'll go ahead and assign 4. This is a pretty important part of the mission we have going here, and I want as much stuff out there as I can. So 4 on that location coming off the lead aircraft, and Control F1. I'll assign 4 off the wingman. And that'll leave me 4 there in reserve that I can do this in waves. I think that's a good first wave of jammers, and then they'll either be effective or they won't, honestly, and this is really the first time that I've ever employed these, so I guess I'm not sure exactly how effective this is going to be, but in theory at least, I think it'll work. Okay, so let me let things run here for a few more seconds. I'll think about what to do next and talk to you then. Okay, and also as I look at my order of battle, I have that EC-130 compass call that I can get on station as well. So let me right click and put them onto ECM South to keep those F-18s company. Yeah, these were, okay, it was just a 2-ship of EA-18s that had the harm, so these will be kind of like a dual purpose ECM and SEAD. And I'll be able to push these in as I push the rest of the SEAD aircraft in there. So yeah, that'll work. I'll be right back. Okay, now down here at Creech Air Force Base, I can start to get some ISR assets allocated to this. You know, I have just so many assets to play with. For the heck of it, I'll get Hawk 1. I'll assign one of these to, let me see, I'll assign it to the ELINT track just to have a global Hawk up. Although it's really overkill on all the stuff that I have up right now when it comes to data collection. And, you know, this is one of those situations where I would have just as much info out here as I do right now if I just had like F-22s and F-35s and maybe some of the more modern types of aircraft I don't really need. And that's, you know, another one of the advantages that I'm sure I'll get to in some more detail here of the F-22 and the F-35 and all the modern systems is that suddenly I no longer absolutely have to have an AWACS aircraft. I no longer absolutely have to have an ELINT aircraft like the rivet joint, because the F-22 and F-35 and a lot of these other aircraft take on those some roles. This would actually be a very fun one to do without a lot of these support aircraft. I'm sure I'll re-attack this scenario again at some point. I mean, that would be a very, very interesting exercise to do this with just maybe half the force. Just take the best of what I have right here, and I would probably be able to do just as good a job. Okay, but the ISR stuff. Okay, let's go to the RQ-170. I'm going to, let me see, I'm going to have to make a track for these guys. I want to try as much as I can to sneak some ISR assets in here just to get some eyes on some different targets, but for now, let me just have a mission set up right here, just kind of our side of the border, as a holding area for ISR. And I'll get some of this stuff pushing up there to eventually try to push in. It's just too risky to try, even with the RQ-170. I'll go to the database entry real quick and go through this. So this one has a surface search radar, ANZPQ1. That'd be. I'll look at that one in Wikipedia in the next little break I put in here. But it's got an infrared sensor, flare sensor. It does ELINT. Another example of I don't necessarily need half the stuff that I have airborne in a support role, because this could do a lot of that itself and not be detected. But yeah, what I wanted to come down to was the, let me see, does it have the RCS in here anywhere? Yeah, signatures for A and D band, and yeah, just from the front, you know, this is the database number for it. Who knows what the real numbers are for any of this stuff, but yeah, 0.013 square meter for an RCS, and on the, you know, the higher frequencies, it's even smaller, 0.0013 square meters. So I mean, that's from the front aspect. Side and rear are just, actually it's the same from the rear. Side is a little bit less of an advantage. So in fact, let me change this around so it's always going to present the front and rear aspect. And I'll keep that in mind as I'm looking at some of these assets that I don't necessarily want detected and see where they perform the best at from an RCS standpoint. So I could probably push these in quite a ways further, but I mean, it's still a little bit too early to do that. And let me see, so I have one of them getting airborne. Let me get a couple of MQ-9s up. So let me assign these two to the ISR hold, and then once things start to shape up a little bit, I can push all this stuff in there and start to get more and better eyes on the locations that I need to be looking at. So as I have my drones crossing the border, here's a little bit more about the ANZPY-1 radar. Synthetic aperture radar, ground moving target indicator, dismount moving target indicator in development, maritime moving target indicator. It's just a nice little, looks like it's a small, lightweight radar system, perfect for something like the RQ-170. Whether it has that exact system or not, I honestly don't know, but. And then the MQ-9, of course, and this is just not going to be survivable once we push it in there, but has a really good capability for what it's worth. You know, it can carry a GPS or laser-guided bomb. Like in this case, it's got a couple of GBU-12s and 4 AGM-114 Hellfires. It has a Lynx, ANAPY-8 Lynx, another type of synthetic aperture radar. It has the MTS ball, ANAS-52, so 100-mile range. Wow, that's a pretty darn good system right there. So let me see, and then a laser designator that's kind of built into the MTS. So yeah, AGM-114s, paveways, and JDAMs, and it'll stay on station forever. So it makes sense to have one up and at least holding so that we can push it in. It doesn't fly fast. Let me see what kind of a speed that gives here for like a cruise. Yeah, cruise 170 knots. And that's, let me see, that's at low altitude, and if I take it up to high altitude, well, it's still 170 knots. So it's not going to get there in a hurry, but speaking of that, how fast is the RQ-170 going to fly for me here? Should be a little bit faster than that, I would think. Yeah, 200, well, it's the exact same speed, I guess. Although, no, it does go a little bit faster at higher altitude. It can go up to 320 if I take it up high, but I don't need this on station in a hurry, so it's just fine. I'll leave all that alone. And okay, we've got this stuff coming across the border. Now I would expect a response from the red side like any time now. So this will be a good opportunity to start building some missions. So I'm going to start with the first thing that I'm going to push in after the decoy. So let me go ahead and build my OCA offensive counter-air mission. Now I have a million different ways to do this. What I'm going to do is just have these two reference points as sort of like a holding area for the OCA aircraft, and then I'm going to build just one big old box around the entire threat area. And let me select all these reference points, and then I'll go Control F11 to build the mission, and I'll call this one OCA. I'm going to have two different OCA missions. I'll have one set up for the 5th gen aircraft and one set up for the 4th gen aircraft. I'll call this OCA Gen 5. Because I'm going to set these up slightly differently depending on the type of aircraft that I have assigned. So the OCA Gen 5 is going to be specifically for my F-22s, and what I don't want these guys to do is use the radar, because they have a data link system that we'll get to the F-22 here in a little bit, but they're going to be able to target these aircraft without having to use their radar. They'll just use their onboard passive sensors and targets that are passed to them from the AWACS aircraft over the data link to engage this stuff up here. And it's another example of just the ridiculous amount of redundancy that I have and different options that I have. I could do this easily without an AWACS aircraft. I could just have like one F-22 with its radar on, the rest of them staying passive, and have the same exact picture. Well, that's probably a little bit of an overstatement, but I would still have a very, very good picture of what's going on up here just using the F-22 systems. So what I want to do for this one specifically, okay, 1/3 roll off, investigate outside the patrol area, yes. And the patrol area, I want to just make sure it's only the 2 points right there, and then for the prosecution area, add everything except for those 2 points. So there you go, it's just going to look in this big box for targets to take out. Now, mission doctrine and MCON. I want to make sure that I have RTB when Winchester set to no. And I also want to make sure that I have MCON radar passive. So that's going to keep them from transmitting. Weapons release authorization, well, I'll have to get to this part once I have aircraft assigned. It's not going to let me do anything to the weapons ranges that I want them to fire from until I have aircraft assigned. So that's just fine. And now I'm going to do essentially just a duplicate mission and call it OCA Gen 4. This is going to be anti-aircraft patrol, 1/3 roll off, investigate outside, and mission doctrine. Let me just hit the reset button right there. I think since I already spent some time, I believe, setting this stuff up in the side doctrine. Okay, that's going to look fine. MCON active for the 4th gen aircraft. Although, I'll look at the specific aircraft. I mean, pretty much any aircraft that we have available right here in this scenario, I think is going to be able to fire at a target without any kind of a radar lock, just using information from a data link. I'll reassess that once we start to assign aircraft to this one. I don't think I want to do this strictly F-22 to begin with, and then only if we just have some stragglers, then press in with the 4th gen aircraft. And at that point, it's not going to matter if they're transmitting or not. They're going to know that, and it might actually be beneficial to have any fighters going in after the F-22s transmitting on the radar, just to distract the enemy from the SEAD aircraft that are coming in, and also all the missiles that I'm going to have coming in after that. So radar active. And okay, the rest of that's fine. So that's the OCA. Actually, no, I need to tweak this a little bit, don't I? Okay, prosecution area. Let me add everything except for those first 2 points. And patrol area, remove the rest. Now that's a good duplicate. Now for the SEAD that's going to follow up the offensive counter air. What I want to do is, you know what? I can use the same exact setup right here. The only known air defenses are right here. And they're going to be firing from far enough out. I'm not going to have anything actually fly over the targets to do SEAD. It's all going to be AGM-88, initially at least. And that's going to be able to be fired from, well, quite a ways out. So, yeah, I'll use the exact same setup here. So Control F11, I'll just call this one SEAD. Just as just a generic mission to throw this stuff onto. I'll call it a patrol. SEAD patrol. Okay, 1/3 roll off, investigate outside the target, patrol area is set, prosecution area is set, so looking at the exact same place. Now, mission doctrine for this one, the RTB when Winchester, I want to know, let me just reset it from the side doctrine. And MCON, I am going to have mostly F-18s and F-16s, or yeah, F-18s and F-16s doing this. I'll leave radar passive on this mission, but I'm going to have offensive ECM active, because thinking specifically about these growlers right here that I have with the AGM-88s holding down here and currently jamming, I'm going to push them in as part of the SEAD package, and I'll probably also kind of push them in as part of any package that I have pushing in to include the fighters. So when they are assigned to the SEAD mission, yeah, they'll be jamming. That's just fine. With weapons release authorization, of course, I will have to wait until I get the aircraft assigned. So this is coming along pretty good. I don't see, well, they're not exactly coming down to intercepted at this point, but I think if we give it time, that's what will happen.